Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, and Greg Soulje is with us today for a weather update. Welcome back, Greg. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy Friday to one and all. But per usual in the weather business, the broadcast business, the farming business, you go 30 hours a day. What did Finkel used to say? 30 hours a day. 9 days a week and 400 days out of the year. So, it may be Friday for some, but there's always stuff to do on the farmstead day by day and year round.
Speaking of stuff to do on the farmstead, lots of corn going in here in northern Illinois this past week. It's a nice little window, but now we started to get more rain, Of course. But I think I kind of remember you talking about that window and the rain and where things are happening.
Yeah, it's some folks get to put it this way, get the big bay window, and we've seen that in parts of the western Corn Belt. Again, as you pointed out, in northern Illinois. Others, it's a little peephole of a window of opportunity, and that's the range. Every year, it seems like we keep redefining, crop variability, planting variability to planting dates and progress and all that. And what else is new here in 2025?
Well, let's put up your slides and let you get at it.
Okay, and of course, you can check us out on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. We'll have more of a regional outlook like we're talking about here in some of the headlines, region by region, the 4-week outlook that takes us into the first week of June, the start of meteorological summertime. And we're seeing that hot ridge, that warm ridge. It's coming into fruition. It's a little displaced. We're going to talk some dynamic meteorology going forward here. We try to do it on the show a little bit about an omega-shaped weather pattern and an El Nino weather pattern, which I think is ramping up a little quicker than anyone is at least thinking about at the current juncture. In any event, welcome to the Corn Belt Update. Chilly air. We'll probably see some areas of patchy frost, northern Great Lakes region over the weekend. Temperatures are a big range for the next couple of days. It'll be actually warmer up north and northwest in the northwestern reaches of the Corn Belt than it will be in eastern, central, and southern sections. We'll talk about that in a minute. And surprisingly, we've made some relatively good progress, I think, in pretty densely populated areas, so to speak, with regard to acreage, parts of northern Illinois. Really, it's northern Missouri that's leading the pack at 47% complete on the corn planting side of things, but everyone else is behind the 8 ball, although that average is skewed a little above the 5-year average. And of course, the areas in the eastern and southern Corn Belt are the slowest, virtually nothing going on. You get into northern Illinois, points west and north from there, a little more progress, 4% complete across parts of Wisconsin. Wouldn't be surprised. It's Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Eastern Dakotas, Iowa, Nebraska that make more headway here in the coming several days. So that's the story there. Plain States area is just, it's just, I don't know how livestock people are dealing with some of the high water issues in central, southern, eastern Oklahoma, down into northern Texas, some of those big cattle areas. They've got to have some standing water in some of those fields and pasture lands. Not to mention, most area streams and rivers are running at about 5 to almost 10 feet above flood stage, centered on Oklahoma City, east to Arkansas, south to almost the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. They had another blast of rain there on the overnight hours, currently moving through the Dakotas. You can actually see 3 distinct separate weather systems on the visible satellite picture. They're all going to coalesce. And then we've got kind of a weird weather setup that you typically don't see at this point in a developing El Nino, let alone the month of May across the west and southwest. But in any event, the flooding goes on and the wet weather pattern goes on for the foreseeable future. You'll see the numbers cranked out on the models. You'll see the numbers we're cranking out on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Again, keyed on the far eastern, some central, and mostly southern Corn Belt and southern Plain States areas going forward. There is the severe weather potential. We get lost in all the flooding stuff, but in the core of the warmth, a 3 out of 5 scale, that means they're going to get roughed up again. Parts of southern Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, down into central and eastern Oklahoma, I should say Texas, with that enhanced risk this afternoon. Farther north, the air is a little more stable, but it's an overrunning process, and that's just going to be shower activity. A couple of thunderstorms thrown in, and again, I don't think we'll get much headway and progress on areas that have seen significant rains here in the past several days across the central and eastern Corn Belt locales. Again, some of the heaviest rain now currently through Missouri, the Ozarks, some big storms closing in on Memphis, Tennessee. On the other side of the coin here, still ongoing dryness and drought. We made some modest improvement to the dryness and drought situation in the eastern Carolinas and Georgia, but Florida's in a world of hurt. Then in about another month to 6 weeks, they'll start their rainy season. we'll see if lightning sparks more fires before they get some significant topsoil moisture help there with the afternoon shower and thunderstorm business in down through the south and southeastern states. There is the drought monitor, by the way, dated and sent on the 29th, that is, of April. And we have essentially eradicated the dryness and drought issues, except for some pockets of northern Illinois. Actually, why we've been able to make some progress with planting. A couple of reports of some planting coming out of central Illinois as well. And of course, the points north and west. Still some ongoing abnormally dry, moderate drought conditions in the northwestern and western Corn Belt. But again, it's still the western sections of the Dakotas, although they had some 1 to 2 inch rains north and east of the Black Hills and the upper Missouri Valley a few days ago. Montana is improving, but the worst situation continues to be in Southern California, the Southwest, West Texas, parts of Oklahoma, Panhandle, and livestock country into western Kansas. I think we've got improvement coming there, and maybe something that happens all at once with the weather system that's coming ashore across California over the course of the weekend. A little patchy frost, as you would expect, in the Snake River Valley of Idaho. No big deal there. Temperatures between 85 and 95. The warmth is returning to Washington State. I believe they lead the pack, as in the country, as in spring grain planting operations. I think they're about 85% complete there. Still lagging a bit would be parts of Montana and the Dakotas. So onto the maps and charts here. Here is the Friday outlook, and kind of a convoluted mess of weather systems. One system pivoting through the eastern sections of Iowa, another feature through Ohio. There's a couple of lows coming up out of the southern plains. It's just a mess of weather, and another one up through the southeastern parts of Canada. All these are kind of going to coalesce and kind of backbuild is another term. You do get the weather, at least in the upper air sense, backing up at times, and this may be a perfect example of it. And so without any big fast movement of weather systems and features still rippling along, shades of red, shades of dark green, Texas, Arklatex, lower Mississippi Valley, southern Corn Belt, and some showers as well moving through the western Great Lakes region. Still not done, thank goodness. To put snow up there, labeled it from time to time of the 4-week forecast, because it's still up there towards the Sioux for the day to day. As we get in through this evening, you can see how things kind of back up a little bit. Systems kind of drawing a boundary to the Ohio River Valley. The severe weather gets going. Southern Texas, the Arklatex, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee Valley. More rain along and south of the I-70 corridor that will be quite substantial. And then that boundary begins to lift back to the north. You can see a couple little lows and a little more coalescing of this weather system. But unfortunately, it's loaded with a fair amount of green, and that is going to be a significant and at times steady rain over Ohio, central and southern Indiana, southern Illinois, and of course on southward. The rains are of benefit. Coming off some 90-degree weather earlier in the week across the southeastern states, and there should be, with time, some of that moisture moving in to the mid-Atlantic region. If you want the most accelerated crop planting, growth and development, soil temperatures, etc., it continues to be over the southeastern part of the country, despite dryness and drought in the mid-Atlantic region. A little eastward push on some of the organized rains, that will be welcome again in the worst drought areas of the mid-Atlantic region. More rain, no field work, and we're just going to be, I think, idled up or increasingly idled up in these eastern and southern Corn Belts locales as we go through next week. That would be the Saturday night perspective. And then by Sunday, not much movement. We're going to get these systems kind of what we call the weather business Fujiwara around. They kind of wrap around each other, and then ultimately you stagnate and stall out the atmosphere, and we'll show you why here in just a second. But more rain, eastern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and you can see, probably should have brought that up on the Saturday panel, but you can see an unusually far south and wet weather system that will also include higher peak snows for the southern Rockies, the central Sierra, the Wasatch Range through Idaho. The rainy season typically ends April 1. Here we are in the first week of May, and we've got to deal with that weather system here. It's going to begin its sweet, slow eastward sojourn across the plains and into the Corn Belt locales. Actually, this weather system that's in the eastern Corn Belt, really, from an up air perspective, is not really going to move, and it's going to actually back up, and we'll show that in just a second. So the headlines: storminess across the west and southwest. We'll have the numbers on the precip chart here on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. And there may be some significant moisture in the southwestern reaches of the country, far southern California, And you'll see how that plays out into the central and southern plains and Corn Belt locales as well. It will be the desert Southwest, they say, in the upper Midwest. It'll stay dry. We would tend to differ with that thinking. There may be a couple of dry-based, gusty, maybe dust storm-producing thunderstorms in the southwestern part of the country. But obviously, a lot of that, especially cotton, is irrigated in through Arizona. So follow me here. Here is the 5-day upper air chart, 25,000-foot winds. It's what we call the 500 millibar chart. It holds about 75% of the mass of the atmosphere. So when you look at winds around 25,000 feet or 500 millibars, it's what we call a constant pressure surface. It really takes in the bulk and averaging of the atmosphere. So this is key in forecasting. And you can see on Monday, 2 well-defined circulations. This is why I think, and we're kind of going back, we're kind of having, we're just looking at, yes, we forecasted that a few months and weeks ago and having trouble even believing our own long-range forecast, but I think we're into an El Nino already from a sensible weather standpoint. That's something that you would see in an El Nino winter or spring. Lows that are cut off from the main steering currents. They take their time warbling their way across the country. And you can see a fast-moving ribbon of air up through the Canadian prairie Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and more defined Thursday and Friday. That's the main polar rain-producing, moving weather system jet stream segments of the atmosphere. And then under that, as we call it, under the ridge, if you will, you can see those highs. Matter of fact, it's going to be warmer in Rapid City and the Twin Cities and Watertown and those areas through the northern plains and upper Midwest than it will be, say, in Champaign, Springfield, Des Moines. Pick your central and eastern and southern Corn Belt locales going forward. So you got those 2 weather systems. There's one that appears to be kind of getting kicked out of the Great Lakes. You can see that system coming across the west into the plain states. Not a lot of deep moisture to work with, but the dynamics and cooling up a lot means there's going to be a lot of hail coming down in some of these thunderstorms. Livestock people into the high plains of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado. Probably going to be some multi-day, and each and every day we're going to be lighting up severe weather in the plains there. And then things kind of get a little diluted and muted between Wednesday, and then by Thursday, we've kind of put together these 2 systems, one from the west, the one from the Midwest gets pulled back to the west. So by the time we get to Friday, the jet stream winds that move the weather systems, they're roaring out of the central and northern Pacific across the Canadian Rockies into areas north of the Great Lakes region. There'll be probably some 80-degree readings in southern Canada, 90 into parts of the northern plains and points on westward. And then under that ridge, cool, rainy, showery weather. If you put any sun on that atmosphere, you make more clouds, you make more rain. You clear it off at night, you put sun on it, you make more clouds, and make more rain. It's just that simple. So that's the story coming into the plains, and then especially the central, southern, and eastern Corn Belt, and still plenty of wet weather-related flooding issues as late as Thursday onto the southern plain states areas, and some indication that some of those rains will be welcome in the mid-Atlantic, and they will not be welcome when all is said and done in the Tennessee Valley, lower Mississippi Valley, and southeastern plains, just like we have been talking about here over the past few weeks and the past few months. There's a kind of a surface reflection, but a lot of times, when I learned the weather business, we learned to forecast, the surface map, but you learn to forecast from the top down, not from the surface on up, because it's the middle and upper atmosphere that moves weather systems, defines temperatures and precip type and all that. So you got a thing around Illinois and Indiana on Monday, weak high pressure at the surface, but there's instability up aloft. On Tuesday, you can see that system coming across the southern plains Wednesday. It's a little ill-defined low, probably a little farther south than we'd like to see. I think the models will eventually get the idea and move that north and northwest. And these models are programmed to behave what should be normal, typical early to mid-May weather, and then they calculate from there what's going on in the atmosphere. So there's a averaging that begins to take place, and once they see that there's a deviation, the models change, and hence the forecast change. So again, we're not a strictly by no means model-based forecasting operation around here, but the bottom line, more rain, more flooding in the southern plains. That system is moving back up by Thursday to Friday, back into the southern and eastern Corn Belt. It's hard pressed to get any more than a day or maybe 2, if you're lucky, of dry weather in those eastern, central, and southern Corn Belt locales from a planting standpoint. You may have a small window, depending on your soil type, tile line running, and all that kind of stuff you might be able to get out there. But bottom line is it remains a character-building goal of it, particularly when you see the 7-day outlook around here from a moisture standpoint. Model-driven here, but the right idea. We'll have our numbers on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. The 7-day totals are significant. Another 3 to 6 inches, eastern Texas, Louisiana, lower Mississippi Valley, probably as far north as the Kankakee River, close to an inch. 1 to 2 inches over the central and southern Corn Belt locales. You can see significant moisture too. Western Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle, Colorado, New Mexico. So that will certainly help out there on some of those rangelands. Folks from the who run the at least the drought monitoring aspect of the National Weather Service did come out with their monthly outlook. You can see this is for the month, and we agree with this. There'll be some short-term improvement to the dryness and drought in Kansas, Oklahoma, West Texas. Worsening, yes, upper Midwest, parts of Wisconsin and Illinois, eastern Iowa, maybe a little overdone, a little exuberant, but the right idea and their seasonal outlook that takes you through the end of July is maybe a little muted. The general right idea, we ought to be beginning to ramp up and probably pedal to the metal of expanding dryness and drought western and northwestern Corn Belt, and that should ultimately spread farther south and east. Again, as we've been talking about, Sarah, if you play your cards right, that drier spell, that hotter weather would be great from growing degree day standpoint. If it gets hot and your roots are sitting in water in those southern Corn Belt areas, well, that's a different story. And again, it'll be something in the plains where we go from a flood to back to dryness and drought. There's going to be no real happy medium in those areas that are getting inundated with big rains right now. So this wide range and dichotomy of weather going on across the plains and Corn Belt locales, and that is pretty much the story for our Friday here in the weather office. So check this out on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. That longer range outlook that takes us into the first week of June on this weekend's edition.
Yep. Check out This Week in Agribusiness on RFD TV and another 120 affiliated stations around the nation. So we'll catch up with you again next week on Tuesday, Greg, and get an update. Hopefully there was a lot of color on those charts, but hopefully not a lot of it turns real severe. I know we kind of talked about a couple areas, but hopefully that just kind of passes through and doesn't cause too much trouble. So
yeah, but the folks down, especially in the southern plains and south of the Ohio and some of that warmer air, moisture laden air in the Tennessee and Kentucky areas and lower Mississippi Valley, going to be a pretty rough go of it here for the next couple of days from a severe weather standpoint. And of course, don't know where we're going to put any more rain. Again, it's gone literally from a drought to a flood into parts of Texas and Oklahoma, and that beat continues on too.
Very good. All right, we'll catch up to you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.